I know this is no secret to you, but society isn't set up for your success. If you are strong, lean, healthy, and fit, you are in the minority of our society. In fact, since the pandemic, we have seen a statistically significant rise in obesity and a major decline in mental health. As leaders, you know that your energy, your passion, and your presence provide powerful indicators of influence. Your ability to show up in your most vibrant and authentic way become the determining factor in your long-term success. I don't want you sidelined by pain, suffering in silence, or just sluggishly moving throughout life, wondering if this is what you were destined to look and feel like. Now, today, there are many news reports claiming that Ozempic or semaglutide is the ultimate weight loss solution that we have been looking for. Or is it? In today's live webinar, I want to break down why Ozempic will make you fat and what to do instead. I recently sat down with best-selling author David Robson to discuss his new book, The Laws of Connection. And I was reminded while reading the book that most of what we do in our daily lives is in an effort to find, create, and maintain connection with others. Without connection, we look for alternatives to help us feel better. At the risk of being too scientific at the beginning of this webinar, there are two hormones that I want to talk about that we constantly are seeking in life. The first is oxytocin, and the second is dopamine. Now, if you haven't been living under a rock for the past few years, you've heard about the power of dopamine and how we are constantly thumbing social media to get this dopamine hit to make us feel better. We do the same thing with food, a snack here, a soda there, and boom, more dopamine. Oxytocin, however, is by many rights more powerful than dopamine. But this hormone isn't giving us a release like a quick boost of energy like dopamine does. Oxytocin is known more as the love drug. We feel a greater sense of connection when we have more oxytocin, and we have those feelings in the mood that raise and stay with us when we tap into greater oxytocin. Many of our decisions in life have to do with seeking connection, and weight loss is no different. So, why am I talking about these two hormones at the beginning? Well, because whenever you choose to make a decision about your health, you're making the decision about, do I want something in the short term, a quick dopaminergic hit, or do I want to lean into loving myself, my life, and those around me by making a long term decision? We choose weight loss solutions and quick fixes because we want to feel better. And if you're honest and look deep enough, you find that you don't want the quick dopamine hit that comes from looking better in the mirror. You want a strong sense of connection that comes from showing up in your life in your best body. You want to feel confident and completely present with your partner. You want connection with yourself, your loved ones, and your community without feeling shy or embarrassed. You want to do what you do because you want more connection. Now, with this as our foundational premise we're going to work from today, and I want you to imagine something with me. So do me a favor and pause, maybe even close your eyes for just a second, and imagine yourself 10 years from now. The big question is, how do you want to look, feel, and move 10 years from now? Now, why 10 years from now, you might be asking? Well, because if you're here today, you probably know the power of compounding. You know that the best day to start investing is yesterday, and the second best day is today. When we talk about a long-term view of investing in ourselves, we tend to take more evolved decisions into account about how we show up and what we choose today. So how you want to look, feel, and move 10 years from now educates the actions you will take today. This is a question that I asked my client Todd. As a 55-year-old father and grandfather, he had identified that he wants to be seen as a dad and a grandpa that continually challenges himself. He wants that connection with his family. He wants to be completely present. As a recognized expert in his industry and an accomplished podcaster and speaker, he wants to live what he teaches. As an international speaker of over 30 years, he recently told me that after 4 months of us coaching together, he, quote, just did the biggest speech of my life. I couldn't believe how I felt. I've been speaking in front of groups for decades, and I've never felt more powerful. I'm standing taller. I have more energy, and when I look down, I feel so great about how my arms look and feel. Todd has learned how to connect better with his audience, with his kids, with his grandkids, and everyone else because he's gotten himself in better shape. Now, when we think about making a decision in the health and fitness realm, it's important to take stock about what the long term ramifications are about that decision. The more clear you are on what you want, the more limited those options become. And as a result, you tend to make better decisions when you are more clear on exactly what you want. Now, there's a lot of things that you could do, but they have significant costs down the road. Part of what I want to educate you on today is how a decision to choose a drug path, an allopathic path towards your weight loss, has significant ramifications that will be difficult to undo. One of my favorite lines from this movie several years ago is when the quote wizard said, "Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain." For several months now, you've heard inflammatory and sensational words about this miracle drug to describe semaglutide, Ozempic, and other GLP-1 drugs for weight loss. Well, the purpose of this webinar is not to give you a breakdown of how scams are marketed. I will give you the number one thing to look for. If something is promoted as a miracle, magical, or some sort of groundbreaking discovery, you're likely listening to a charlatan or a snake salesman who doesn't want you to look behind the curtain. And yeah, it doesn't matter how much money they make and how many times they get doctors to tell you this, you need to look behind the curtain. So today, I'm going to pull back the curtain and break down why this quote miracle drug may make you fat in the long run. Now, proponents of semaglutide claim that there are four mechanisms with which the drug works to promote weight reduction. So we'll start at four and go to one. Number four, it promotes fat breakdown. Now, on the surface, this sounds great. However, extensive research shows that just because you increase what's called lipolysis or fat breakdown, you're not guaranteed to decrease body fat. Bringing fat from its cells to be burned as energy is not something that your body needs help with. You burn fat as a fuel source all the time. In fact, if you are sitting here listening to this, driving in your car, you are freeing up fat from the cells and you are burning it at a higher percentage rate than you are burning carbohydrates. Now, this argument is the same argument that the keto and carnivore communities do to promote their diet. However, randomized controlled studies in humans show that someone who burns a higher percentage of fat as a fuel does not lose more weight than someone eating carbohydrates when total caloric intake is equalized. Number three, the claim is that semaglutide will increase basal metabolic rate. Now, again, this claim is an interesting one to be sure. On the surface, it sounds really good, but I have a few questions. It increases basal metabolic rate by how much? How long is that rate increased for? And taken in the context of a year or two, what does the claimed increase in metabolic rate lead to in terms of caloric burn? I.e., if your rate of caloric burn increases by about 100 calories per day, then it would take about 35 days to lose a pound of fat. Now, if your basal metabolic rate or your BMR is increased by 100 calories and you lose that pound of fat, then what? Does your new BMR stay at that level or does it decrease? Now, we've known for decades of research and observation and study that when you lose weight, your BMR decreases. All tissue, muscle, and fat have a burn rate. We call it a metabolism to it. Yes, guys, fat has a metabolism. Now, it's not as metabolically active as what muscle is. That's why we talk about building muscle so you can be more metabolically active. But yes, fat has a metabolism. There is a function for fat in the body, and there is a metabolic rate to fat. But as you lose tissue, fat included, your basal metabolic rate decreases. Now, more on the stickiness of this supposed BMR increase later, but for now, I'd say that that's a sticky claim to say the least. Number two, lowers your blood sugar. Now, I'm not going to pull any punches on this one. The blood sugar regulation army needs to be defeated immediately. In fact, I recently found an influencer with over 4 million followers on social media who is spouting pseudoscience about the importance of blood sugar regulation for weight loss. Now, graybeards like me who have been in the industry know that you gain fat with blood sugar. No, it's actually the exact opposite. That theory has been disproven for almost 2 decades now, if not longer. While we don't have time to go too deep into this rabbit hole, I can tell you that if you are not diabetic or pre diabetic, you don't need to worry about your body fat percentage relative to your blood sugar. It doesn't make any difference. It's just a scare tactic and something that sounds really good. If, for laughs, you want to hear about my personal experience where I dropped my body fat by 3 percentage points while eating a donut a day, trying to spike my blood sugar, let's check. It was actually a fun experiment, and there were some great donuts. Finally, the fourth claim is decreased appetite. Now, the reality is this is the mechanism where weight loss is actually coming from. No Wizard of Oz, no magic, nothing. The weight loss comes from the fact that you eat less because your appetite is lower and you drop the weight. Less calories equals less you, full stop. Now, when we look at Ozempic, GLP-1, or semaglutide, whatever you want to call it, let's talk about the risks. No one tells you about these risks, and so I want to break it down for you because I trust that you're intelligent enough to look at this and say, oh, that makes sense. So follow me here for a minute, if you will. Here's the scenario. You go on the drug and you lose 20 pounds. I'm being ultra conservative here. Actually, I'm probably not being conservative enough, but I'm out of those 20 pounds. Let's say you lost 15 pounds of fat and you lost 5 pounds of lean muscle. Now, my experience is when people go on a significant decrease in calories and they lose a lot of weight quick, they lose about 40 to 50% of that from lean and 40 to 50% 50 to 60% from fat. Again, it's observational. Over 25 years of watching people go on extreme diets, it is not something that I can claim that I have done a specific study on. It's just something I've seen. But let's say that you drop 15 pounds of fat and 5 pounds of lean. So for simple math, we're going to say that you're starting at 200 pounds and you are now 180 pounds. Does that make sense? So former you, 200 pounds, new you, 180 pounds. Sounds great, right? But what about the rebound? Now, if you're like any human being on this planet, you have ups and downs in weight because you have changes to lifestyle. You have holidays, you have birthdays, you have travel, and you have many, many things that get you to the point where you don't eat like a robot. You don't move like a robot all the time. So new you is 15 pounds of fat less, 5 pounds of lean less. Rebound you gains 10 pounds back, which is all fat. So you now have a net 5-pound less fat loss. Yet you're still 5 pounds less lean. The net rebound of fat, 10 pounds. But what about the holiday? Well, holiday you gained 7 pounds of fat. You're now net 2 pounds of fat more. Still 5 pounds of less lean muscle. And so the net rebound, holiday you, is 3 pounds less on the scale. Are you tracking with me? Now, here's what I can tell you. If you've lost 5 pounds of lean and you are 2 pounds heavier with fat than what you were at the very beginning, you will look doughier, softer, and less tone. But what happens the next year? Well, the cycle continues annually. This is statistically proven that we gain weight over time, not because of age, but because of lifestyle factors. And so if your lifestyle doesn't change, here's what happens. Maybe you guys gained 5 pounds because you're doing a new product launch and work's really busy. Maybe you gained 5 pounds over vacation. Maybe it was over the birthday or another holiday, and still you're 5 pounds less muscle. Fast forward 1 to 2 years from now, and you look and feel fatter, but maybe you're even at the same weight or pretty close to it. Metabolism has dropped because you've lost lean muscle and you have gained more fat. This extreme diet cycling is nothing new. It's not the new thing on the block. The only thing that's new about it is the pill poker powder that you're being sold. We've seen it for decades. Extreme dieting in any form, which is essentially what Ozempic, semaglutide, yada, 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 leads to. It all takes us down the same path. The only difference is you're using a drug that has been approved, but it also puts you at a higher risk for some known and unknown side effects. Now, as a coach who spent almost a quarter of a century in health and fitness, I've coached hundreds of top executives, collegiate pro, and Olympic athletes to achieve great results in the time that they have available. The Ozempic movement, if I'm being completely honest, is identical to every other miracle weight loss drug movement that I've ever seen. Now, what you may see is the beginning, where there's a lot of hype and excitement. What I see is the beginning of a really difficult story, and I see that it will most likely end the same way. Side effects, lawsuits, and you feeling frustrated, misled, and ultimately disappointed. So, what can you do instead? Now, recently I had a conversation with a business leader that reminded me of why I have the passion for what I do. He, like me, several years ago, was a walking contradiction. Well, I'm healthy as a horse, he said, right after he listed the multitude of medications he was on. I don't care about how I look. It's not about the ego, he continued, right after he finished telling me about his cars, planes, and the number of boards he was on. On and on he went, the walking manifestation of the lies that we all tell ourselves. The dissociation we have when things become too difficult. You see, I was in that same place about 10 years ago. I looked relatively good from others' perspectives because I'm naturally smaller and I could hide my extra body fat under the right tailored suit. I had a lot of passion, I was told. So that hid my ever growing anxiety and depression that I was feeling. I moved poorly. I had hip, back, knee, elbow, shoulder pain, and not to mention major digestive issues. I was carrying about 25 pounds extra body fat. Embarrassing moments mounted, and I realized that I just couldn't go on like this anymore. There had to be a better way. I realized that while I knew the science of what to do, I was missing some crucial cruxes. And like many busy executives, I majored in minor things. I was the guy who was, quote, in charge, and in a way that got in the way of my coachability and my ultimate growth because I tried to think through my problems rather than being coached on the behaviors that I needed to do in order to achieve the results I wanted. I tried to take a bad approach and shoehorn it into my lifestyle. And finally, I lived in a state of constant dissociation and I ignored the power that living in a better body had on every area of my life. So today I want to cover a few things. Not only how you can stop the cycle of weight loss and weight gain, whether it's through an extreme diet or using a drug like semaglutide, but what can you do to craft an evolution? Why most short-term fitness programs fail, to answer the three most important aspects of long-term success, and how you can naturally improve your hormones, sleep better, and maximize your energy, all while building your body the right way. Now, I also want to talk to you about why choosing one method of working out is hindering your success and blocking you from achieving your health and fitness goals. And finally, why weight loss is a pretty overrated goal and how we want to think about framing sustainable success in the future. Now, today's just the tip of the iceberg. Over the next several minutes together, we're going to cover a lot of information. I'm going to share with you as much as I can about a simple solution that becomes more nuanced as you go along, but I want to get you started today. If there's something that resonates with you, let's talk. Does that sound good? Because what I do is about living and living well, living a life without limits and living a life on your own terms. You see, in a society where everyone is focused on weight loss, constraining, cutting carbs, cutting calories, not drinking cocktails, taking a pill, powder, or a poke, restrict, restrict, restrict. I want you to live the way you want to live. You don't have to get the injection to take the pill. Eat the latest fad, keto, carnivore, or clean. I'm not trying to convert you to the church of keto. You don't have to take ice baths, call people bro, take selfies at the gym to prove you did the work. You can live your best life, like me in this photo. And you see, I love to go on vacation and do what I want. Sometimes that's with my wife and I, and sometimes it's with the entire family, where we run, we hike, we play, we eat amazing food because it's really about living and living well, living a life without limits and living a life on your terms. Now, I'm curious, what does that look like for you? If you were to imagine the best life that you could be living in the body that you've always wanted, can you picture that in your mind right now? Now, I hope this is making sense. And we're not just talking about the science of something, because ultimately, what we're trying to do when we go after a weight loss goal is create connection with ourselves and connection with others. We want to remove the blockers and the barriers that keep us from living a life that we're proud of. Like my client Sterling. Now, when he came to me, he had already had multiple surgery. He had joint pain in his back, hips, shoulders, and knees. He was a 67-year-old who says that his joints are cast in concrete, and he is a self-proclaimed retired old fart who just started a new business and actually found himself busier than ever. As you can see, Sterling dropped 15 and a half pounds in 2.5 months so far. He's improved his heart health through zone-based cardio plan. He moves better with less pain, and he has daily plans to stay active and vital rather than just winging it. He quote unquote plays with his grandkids by doing the prescribed workouts together. Now, Sterling is one example of a client who's following my evolved method of total transformation. The evolved method is basically built around 3 pillars. It's what I call my OPF model of nutrition, where we optimize your performance, the evolved method of movement, and my psychosocial emotional model of consulting. So, what is the OPF model and how can you use it? Well, first we have to look at why most nutrition plans fail. Number one, they aren't rooted in science. The health and fitness industry and the medical community has done more to confuse you than actually educate you on the science of health, body composition, and how to achieve what you want. Number two, plans are focused more on what you can't eat rather than following the science. Now, my only restrictive rule with my clients is that you can't eat anything that negatively harms you. Now, for me, that's soy. I'm allergic to it, so I actively cut it out of my diet. Everything else is fair game. Number three, plans don't do an initial assessment to determine your needs prior to prescribing what you should be doing. And number four, they make minor things into major things. If I have to hear one more person tell me that Gary Brecka told them that they could take a cold plunge and burn more fat doing that than they could through caloric intake, I'm going to lose it. What a minor thing to focus on that has absolutely no scientific impact on your overall result. Finally, most plans lack a full comprehensive plan. Now, I don't work with my clients to get them to lose weight. My client Sterling, for instance, he's not just staying with me until we reach his weight loss goal. He's with me until we maintain that goal for several months. Because when you maintain a goal for several months, you are starting to reset your new metabolism. Now, I know you've lost weight before, right? You've lost weight before, and then you said, hey, now what? And without the right plan, you went back to what you were doing before with a couple of modifications, and you gained the weight back. Now, most plans are designed by people in the health and fitness industry who either don't know what they're doing or they have eating disorders or disordered eating patterns at best. So, if you want lasting results, you have to address the psychosocial emotional aspects of eating and lifestyle, because most plans assume you have more time than you do and that you can be the boring broccoli and chicken and rice preparation guy all day long. So, how can you get started? What are some action steps that if you left here today and say, I'm choosing not to go down the path of pokes, powders, and pills, what can you do? Well, first, understand what I mean by optimum performance. It means way more than what you think it is. Yes, food is fuel, but it's not just fuel in the way that you might be thinking about it. It's fuel for your brain, it's fuel for your soul, it's fuel for your body, and it's fuel for your relationships. It's so much more than calories and macro and micronutrients. You see, if you want to make changes to your body composition, you have to learn and abide by the scientific principles. There's no getting around that. But if you want to do it for the long run, you've got to go deeper and understand why you eat what you eat. So to get started, follow these 5 steps. Number one, we have to set your goals, which are your calorie, macronutrient, protein, fat, carbs, and food target goals to get you relative to your goal. Number two, we list out your favorite foods and we reverse engineer a plan to keep them in your diet. Number three, we get an accurate baseline. Track for 7 to 14 days to understand where you're actually at. 4, set targets relative to the goal and your need. And finally, we set a year-long plan that includes phases of fat loss, muscle gain, and maintenance, including travel and holiday schedule. Now, how do you keep this? Well, you have to understand the full picture of what the OPF model looks like. I teach that you have to understand the 6 C's of nutrition. Otherwise, you will rebound and go back to to unhealthy habits, which means you've got to move beyond the binary. In order to implement the 6 C's, you have to understand there is no moral value to food. And I'm going to say that louder, but I'm going to pause for effect. Are you hearing me on this one? There is no moral value for food. It's not good or bad. It's not healthy or unhealthy. It simply is. Now, are there foods with more calories than others? Yes. Are there foods with more nutrients than others? Absolutely. Are there foods that have more toxic chemicals in them? You bet. But food is not inherently good or bad, healthy or unhealthy. Food and your relationship with it must be more nuanced if you want to learn how to evolve. Implementing the 6 C's takes a strategic plan. You have to understand that food is culture. Think family, location, community, and religion. Food is a cornerstone to all of our interactions in society. Number 2, food has to be convenient. If it's not convenient, it's not going to work with your life. Hours of meal prepping never works in the long run. Number 3, food is connection. Whether it's your morning coffee watching the sunrise where you connect with yourself and your higher power, or it's sitting down and eating food or having a drink with a friend that connects the two of you together. 4th, food is comfort. Our taste buds and our hormonal responses are set up to crave comfort. Learning how food provides you comfort is a critical step on your path of personal evolution, but there's more to it. It's not about turning that off or just leaning into pleasure all the time. Understanding how food can provide you comfort and you utilize that in a way that helps you to positively move forward with strong emotional intelligence takes some time. Number 5, communication. Now, if you want to lose fat, gain muscle, improve your flexibility, you want to fix your digestive issues, you have to learn how to eat, communicate to your cells so that they respond to the goals that you have. If I want more muscle, I need to make sure that my protein intake is adequate so that I communicate to my cells that I'm trying to build more muscle. If I want a nice, healthy, vibrant brain, I need to make sure that not only protein levels are adequate, but I'm also getting some of the essential fats that are crucial for my body to function well. Number 6, finally, food is creativity. I'll be honest, it's sad, but we've moved away from aesthetics in our society. Cars, homes, buildings, and mills are bland and boring. Food and how we eat are a beautiful way of expressing our life, love, and creativity with others. So, how do you pull it together? Well, number 1, you've got to set goals to start to work to achieve them. Number 2, you have to craft an annual plan that details how your 6 C's work for you and take you through different phases so you understand what's important to you. And number 3, don't forget about setting a baseline. Now, my client recently went to Europe for about 3.5 weeks to visit family and tour. As you can imagine, this was not a time for him to be on his diet. We leaned into the concept of culture and connection and used food as a tool and a mechanism to help him explore how he connects with those that he loves and how he connected with the cultures that he was visiting. He came back at about the same weight, maybe 1 or 2 pounds lighter, but he felt so great on his trip, stronger than ever, and is continuing to move forward. Now, this process is also what we did with my client Dan during the first 16 weeks of his plan. We adjusted his food to meet his needs of being type 1 diabetic. Now, during that time, he lost 8 pounds of fat, gained 7 pounds of muscle, as you can see from the picture. I mean, that's a pretty impressive back, isn't it? And now, this head of marketing eats the foods he loves, which, like me, includes donuts, and he achieves his goals along the way. After we've addressed the nutrition, we need to move towards movement and understanding that your movement intelligence, or your MQ, is one of the most important things that you need to learn in life. But first, let's talk about why your workouts are currently failing you. Number one, you're not training to meet your goals. Number two, your workout has the wrong goal attached to it. Number three, you're using the wrong exercises and or poor form from well-meaning people who don't quite understand how proper movement is supposed to work. And number four, you're probably just winging it. You don't really have a plan that goes from period to period or phase to phase, and you're not necessarily doing something in a thoughtful way to take care of your body. So how do you get started? When I work with my clients, the first thing we do is we assess rather than guess. We have to understand what their current limitations are so that we design a program that's specific to their body. How far forward is your head? Which shoulder is raised higher? Where is specifically tight, and where is the pain coming from? Not just where it presents, but how do we address where your problems are arising from? After we've assessed, we create an annual plan. Now, this doesn't matter if a client only sticks with me for 6 months. I build an annual plan regardless because I need to see what that annual plan looks like relative to their goals, their needs, and the movement faults or problems that they have. The third thing we do is we plan in the progression over time in what I call the Milo principle. Now, one of my clients came to me recently and said, "Hey, I've competed in Spartan races before, haven't done very well, but I'd like to do well this time." After we went through the assessment, we identified three main priorities, with a fourth one as being a minor priority. The first three priorities all had to do with his ability to move well, and the fourth one had to do with dropping a little bit of body fat. We spent the first 3 months focusing on the first priority. We spent the next 3 months focused on the next priority, and we are now into the third priority. What's really cool is along the way, we're meeting the fourth priority, which is getting him leaner than he's been in 25 years. Moving well throughout life requires really three things. Number one, resistance training. Number two, zone based cardio to keep your heart healthy. And number three, soft tissue work. After we've moved through the movement piece, we've got to get to where you understand how to make this evolution. And this is where consulting and my psychosocial emotional model comes into play. Now, in another conversation with author David Robson, we were talking about his other book, The Expectation Effect, and discussing the power and impact that the mind has when we are crafting the life we want. What his research has found is that our expectations make a very profound difference in the results that we get in life. And that's why my coaching model is based not just on food and nutrition and movement, but on the psychosocial, emotional aspects of how you make the changes. Over the years, I've coached and spoken to hundreds of leaders about the power of mindset in our evolution. And I will tell you that the stories you tell yourself are the most powerful and impactful piece of your overall growth and evolution. But here's the catch. Tell me if I'm wrong on this. Have you ever had somebody point out a blind spot to you? Some story that you didn't realize you were telling yourself, and then when you did, you could see that through the tapestry of your life? That story created an expectation in your mind, and you achieved the results relative to the story and the expectations. So this has led to failure. And when people come to me, I see them fail to make changes because of three things that essentially create speed bumps. First is the way they interact with food in all situations. Second is those sneaky hidden beliefs that we've picked up over the years relative to food movement and our bodies. Now, I hope that makes sense. I hope that you're listening to this and saying, yeah, I remember when. You see, for me, I had an epiphany moment when I was about 35 years old. One day, I was recalling a moment that I had with a grandfather that was relatively abusive to me. And I remember a story that he had told me to try to scare me away from eating sugar. I didn't realize that for much of my life after that, anytime I would pick up sugar, I was giving the proverbial finger to this man who was abusive to me. I was taking back my power and my control by eating that sugar. And as soon as I had that realization, I no longer desired to eat sugar when I was upset, angry, or frustrated anymore. Does that make sense? I hope it does. And I hope some of you who are listening to this can resonate with it, because if we don't understand the habits that we've picked up over the years relative to our food movement and our bodies, we will never move to a point where we stop the diet yo-yo cycle and we actually start to evolve. Now, number three, you probably failed because of the dissociation you have with your body and the question of what to do when. When the stressors arise, what do you do? Oh my gosh, Steve, I was so stressed last night, I ate an entire tub of broccoli, said no one ever. Now, to elicit evolution, you really must do three things. Number one, you have to understand your history with your body, with food, with pain, with discomfort. All of these pieces play into your overall growth and evolution. Number two, you need to assess your emotional intelligence and your neurological type so you understand what the framework is that you're working with. And number three, you need to develop a progressive plan focused on building habits with a consistent step up mentality while you're assessing and utilizing daily, weekly, monthly progress KPI reports. Now, if you don't do that, you will struggle and continue to cycle back and forth. Remember how I told you years ago that I was sitting here 25 pounds heavier and I had a lot of pain and I just kept repeating the same problems over and over again? In fact, I remember one time that I was walking around a health club. And yes, I was running a health club at the time. And I went over to pick up a 20-pound plate or 25-pound plate. When I bent over, I threw my back out. What was even more embarrassing is here I am, the head of this club, walking around in a suit, and I had my two bosses with me. They didn't notice that I threw my back out, and I masked it as best I could. But I was 25 pounds overweight. I'd thrown my back out, and this was not the first time. It kept happening over and over and over again. The thing that changed for me was these three steps. You won't evolve unless your plan involves your family, your work, and your service demands. It addresses the decreased recovery capacities that we have as we age, i.e., hey, Bob, you're not in college anymore. Now, as we wrap up today, I want to challenge you. I want you to take charge. I want you to be accountable. If something resonated with you, don't wait. Get moving. You only get one life and one body. As Warren Buffett has said, your body is like a car. You can pick just about any car you want, but it has to last you your entire life. You only get one body. You only get one mind, and it has to last you the rest of your life. With that in mind, what car would you buy? How would you take care of it? What would your investment look like? You see, one of the things that blows me away is we will spend a few $1,000s on a pill poker powder, and yet we will balk at ideas that cost several hundred or a few $1,000s to actually do things the right way. It's mind-blowing to me. People that will spend $80, $90, $100,000 on a car, $1 million or more on a house, will parcel, and piece together sparse solutions that never will work. Because as Gall's law states, that you will never be able to create a complex solution from the beginning that will work. All complex solutions start with simplicity, and they build from there. And my experience to go along with Gall's law is that if you want to get results, hire a coach that tells you what the simple solution is right now so that the solution can become more complex over time. Otherwise, you'll get lost in the weeds. I'm curious, what was your biggest takeaway? What questions do you have? I know we're talking about a topic that is pretty controversial, and I'm going against what a lot of doctors and a lot of other people will tell you is amazing to do. Go take the pill, the poke, the powder, and lose the weight. So I'm really curious, what was your biggest takeaway? And if you're ready to evolve, let's talk about what some next steps are. If you're okay, I'd like to take just a second and explain what I do. So I coach people in a very bespoke fashion. I only take on a few clients at a time because I spend a lot of time with my clients and on their program. Now, you and I would only meet probably once a week via Zoom, and you would have your entire program in the app that I have designed for you with specific videos that I've created to show you how to do everything you need to do. So the process is really simple. If you want to get started, the easiest way to do so is to book a bottleneck identification call. This is where we identify where are the bottlenecks for you. What is it that you're getting stuck on? Where do you cycle back over and over and over again and you just can't seem to break through? After that, we'll follow up with a strategy call if necessary, where you'll get a custom strategy plan presentation and you will start on your path of personal evolution. Now, my coaching program is not for people who are looking for something cookie cutter. It is not for people who are looking to spend $100 or $200 for a cheap program. It is specifically for high achievers, for performers who are willing to invest significantly in themselves to get a real result. With that in mind, let me give you one final thought. Most scams sound really good at the very beginning. Just take this pill, take this poke, take that powder, and you're going to get great results in very little time. It may cost $100, it may cost $1,000, but the results will be fast. Guys, I'm here to tell you what I do is not a fast solution. It's a lasting solution. You want to be built to last, not built cheap. If this is you, let's talk.